our curious listeners. You're listening to the Rewired Woman Podcast, where you can eavesdrop on our girly chat and learn the science behind our random questions and interests. Join our conversations and follow us on Apple, Spotify, and iHeartRadio, or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm your host, Kat, and I'm here with the beautiful, courageous Madeline.
Hey, chickens. That actually goes into my question today, which is why chickens were on my mind. I know you've probably heard this question before, but I'm on the edge of my seat to know what your answer is. Would you rather fight 100 chicken-sized horses or one horse-sized chicken?
Oh my god.
100 is a
Lot.
A chicken-sized horse or a horse-sized chicken.
No, a horse-sized chicken. I'm not doing
Terrifying.
I'm not doing the horse-sized chicken. I'm doing the 100 chicken-sized horses, but I do feel like either way, I'm losing.
What would be your strategy for tackling 100 chicken-sized horses?
I'm not tackling them. I'm defensive. I'm on the defense. I'm running. I'm hopping.
Okay. So you're just evading.
Yeah, I'm evading. Okay,
What would you do between the chickens and the horses? Same logic. I would pick the 100 chicken-sized horses.
it's really about size for you.
It is about size for me, and also all animals know I'm their friend, so I would just pet them and we would be friends.
Size matters.
Size matters.
And I didn't know being friends was an option.
The horses are friendly.
If we were gonna be friends, I definitely want the horse-sized chicken because that would be the best ride. Or anywhere, honestly.
Okay, that would be fun. You have a little harness.
Yeah.
But I still want 100 chicken-sized horses. That'd be so fucking cute.
Yeah.
That'd be really cute. They could have little sweaters.
You just love a little
So I love a little sweater. Furry friends and sweaters, my jam.
All right. So today we're going to drink some kombucha mixed berry. This is supportive of our gut and microbiome. And we'll be talking about kombucha as a part of the ritual for cycle syncing, because that, spoiler alert, is what we're talking about today. Yeah, she really is stoked. No, actually though, this has been a very complicated and complex emotional episode, and we did not see that coming. I was so excited to talk about this because when we thought about womanhood and science, like, my cycle is something very present in my life. And so I immediately brought this to her, and she was so supportive because she could just tell how passionate I was about it. And she was just very supportive and like willing to do it. And then through us trying to record this, we ran into a lot of resistant energy.
Like Kat said, when she brought it up, I was like all in. I was like, this is going to be so awesome. I'm excited to learn about it. I'm excited to hear about it. I'm excited to share it with our listeners. And then we've tried to record this already. This is going on third time. And it's been like a surprisingly really emotional topic for me that I wasn't expecting. So I'm excited to get into it. And I'm really excited to hear about your experience with cycle syncing and how it can help a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, so we're going to be going back and forth and kind of oscillating between my energy around it, which is like super passionate, super excited,
And the reality of how that can be for some menstruating or not menstruating women and the emotions that brings up. So, Kat, how did you even get into cycle syncing? Why is it something that you're so passionate about?
I started cycle syncing because I have a weird relationship to my cycle. It has allowed me a new type of relationship with myself. And us being on a healing journey and trying to rewire ourselves as women, I think that this was a part of my wiring that I didn't really understand. I felt very like in the shadows about, and I felt very connected to. So this was just a part of my healing journey and like a large part of it. For a long time, I was on hormonal birth control. And when I got off hormonal birth control, I was very concerned about my fertility. I had essentially abandoned my reproductive cycle and like suppressed it for a long, long time. So cycle syncing was a way to kind of regain a relationship with a part of myself that I don't think society really shines a light on.
Definitely not. I actually think that's part of why I didn't even connect how emotional this was gonna be for me, because I just don't even think about it.
Well, you try hard not to. Well, you do. You have to. You're like forced to
Yeah.
think about it.
And I still, like, try so hard not to.
Yeah. So I think that it would clarify to the audience, like, what is your relationship with your cycle? And kind of like, what is the resistance or just what is your relationship to your cycle?
So my relationship to my cycle is, I guess you could say, avoidant. I started my period really young, like 9 or 10, like towards the end of 4th grade. And I went through puberty really early because of that. And they started off so vicious. And so it was a really bad time. All of my periods in my teenage years were like, literally only call them violent. I would always have super heavy bleeding all 7 days and accompanied by excruciating cramping, that went all the way down my legs into my feet, and, like, I just remember, like, my toes curling, and I'd be, like, glued to the toilet because 'cause I'd be throwing up the whole time, and it was just, like, an awful, awful, terrible experience, and it was really hard to do anything else. Like, I never was put on birth control until, like, a lot later, and, like, had endometriosis, so I don't think that I realized how abnormal it was, but almost because of that understanding, and then my doctors being like, "Oh, that's, like, really normal in girls your age," it kind of, like, flew under the radar and wasn't, like, properly addressed.
And so there's a lot of, it feels like gaslighting because they're essentially saying, "Oh, your pain is normal, and that's just something in society we accept that you are going to be uncomfortable, and uncomfortability is a part of your life that is unavoidable, and we don't actually have a way of telling how uncomfortable is normal and not normal." And like Mad's experience is like she's in a very abnormal level of uncomfortability, but also uncomfortability doesn't have to be the norm. It just is. And cycle syncing is about kind of decreasing that uncomfortability and flowing with it rather than against it.
I would have full like, it once I started bleeding, it was always a full 7 days,
Uh-huh.
but the distance between those days was never regular. Sometimes I would be having, like, a period 2 times a month. Sometimes it would be, like, every other month. It never started on the same day or within the same couple days.
Yeah, we have all these symptoms associated with menstruation, and it's actually, in my experience with cycle syncing, it really relieved a lot of the uncomfortability and some of the symptoms that come along with menstruation. It opened my mind to the idea that there doesn't have to be uncomfortability, and that uncomfortability doesn't have to be the normal for me.
What about you? What were your periods like as a teenager?
So I started my period when I was 13, 12 going on 13. And when I was 13, I was immediately like medically put on oral contraceptives as a way of regulating an irregular period.
But can I do a side note really fast?
Yeah.
That I think that even, like, what made me think of this is, like, it's so crazy, but, like, I grew up in Arkansas and you grew up in California.
Oh,
And it's almost, like, right, because I'm, like, thinking, I'm like, "Why was I not put on birth control?" And I'm just like, I just don't even think that was, like, something that the doctors would have even done. They were just like, "You have to fucking deal with it."
yeah.
Because I was in a state that, like, you, and especially then, you weren't able to get birth control, like, at that age.
Yeah.
I didn't even think about that. Crazy.
This is why religion should stay far away from medical procedures, especially women's bodies. You can fuck right off with that. All right. I'm sorry if you're religious, but just, I mean, like, the whole contraceptive thing.
You can be religious, but, like, don't be, like, fucking up people's lives.
Don't just, God, he's not giving medical advice in that book, okay? Like, he's not giving medical advice. Okay, so that's my opinion. And you can have yours and I can have mine, and my opinion is that shit ain't medical advice.
Yes.
All right.
It just made me real, because, like, you're like, "Oh, I started my period," and I was like, "Put on birth control." And I'm like, "Why did that not happen to me?" And then it occurred to me because I was in a conservative state.
Yeah, and I was in like the most liberal state that was like, we could put anybody on birth control, like, especially if like I would think that's a whole nother thing. Anyways, so yeah, I'm glad you brought that in because it is good to be aware of like how cultures shift our perception around menstruation. Because I also think that I'm just begging to guess that like the way women are viewed and women's rights in general and women's uncomfortability is not a priority in Arkansas. And like in California, they're like, we kind of care about how women feel just a little bit more. Not like a ton more, like not like life changing levels more, but oh, maybe. I mean, I got put on birth control. Anyways,
Yeah. No, and I think it's like expanding on that. It's like when we think about like all mental health disorders, not saying that this is, but like part of the diagnosis part is how much it disturbs your life or takes you away from normal activities. And I was missing full weeks of school once or twice a month because like I would literally just be bleeding. Like I couldn't go to school because I'd have to go to the bathroom multiple times in one class period. I bled through at school multiple times, middle school through high school. How embarrassing. No matter what I did. And I also was just in such severe pain. I like literally couldn't have my eyes open or have my head up. And they were just like, yeah, that's normal.
yeah, and those are like very obviously signs that there's like medical intervention needed, but they're also not aware of what that medical intervention is because they don't care enough to even study
Look
it.
into it. Yeah, they're just like, oh, you're being dramatic or something.
Yeah, women are hysterical. I think another thing is that so first 2 years of my cycle, I'm not even 8 months in. I'm not even like a full year into my cycle and they're already I think the other flip side of that, like you weren't even medicated and given what we know about your medical future after getting your like hormonal birth control could have actually helped some of the tissue things that were going on in your reproductive system, which there's a whole bunch of research around that we're not even going to get into in this topic in this episode because there is so much more now than there ever was.
Yeah.
And because it is so important and because women are getting into science and they're saying this is so like we have a right.
Yeah, we have a right to know our bodies, even if it's difficult to make studies around.
Yeah. And but that being said, in the first 2 years of a cycle, it is irregular because your body doesn't know what it's doing yet. So, like, the fact that they felt so early on, like, there's 2 extremes, right? Like, they felt so much like menstruation was something to be treated as, like, a medical disorder when it's, like, a natural occurrence in human bodies, where, like, Arkansas was like, "This is so normal that we're, like, gonna like ignore everything about it." And California was like, we are so concerned about this that we're gonna treat it before it's a problem.
It's like we want you to be it's like almost being like that, like you said, it's like a disease, and like we want you to function
Like a man.
like a man.
Yeah.
Oh, like you need to be able to show up in school and like get good grades and be able to be clear focused and not deal with this bleeding shit.
Yeah, we just not like give you hormones so that you act more like a man. So yeah, before I even have time to get to know my body and to get in sync with this and for it to regulate, I'm already on medication for it. I stay on hormonal oral contraceptive birth control until right before I go to college. And then I get on the Mirena, a hormonal implant, and I stay on it for 7 years, even though it's only like really clear for 5 years. I think I went at 5 years to get it out. And the gyno was like, ah, nah, like, why replace it? Just use it for a couple more years. Cause like, anyways, so I get it out.
It's probably fine.
Yeah, they don't actually know. They're just like, it's working. And so I stay on it for 2 extra years. I get it out in 7 years. And after that, like I have a really irregular cycle. I have very extreme PMS, PMDD symptoms. So PMS is premenstrual syndrome and PMDD is premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And this talks about like the emotional crashes and burnout and some of the symptoms kind of going outside of a normal level, like where they're interrupting your daily functioning. And a lot of people have this. And because at a young age, we were told, like, oh, that's normal. But now we're kind of starting to pathologize this. And this is in some cases good, but in some cases, like a repeat of that, like, let's treat your menstrual cycle like a disease.
So it's like, I think this is really cool you're bringing all this up because it just shows like the nuance that is required to approach a topic like this and like within people that menstruate, like there's so much variability. And because there's so much variability, it hasn't been that well studied. And because it hasn't been that studied, we don't know where those boundaries are between like what is like a normal experience and like what is like actually problematic on like a medical level.
I think that is why I think menstruation is so spiritual, because the idea that there is a normal is just something that I think we as Westerners and as humans like want to hold on to. But I don't think that there's any woman that like needs to experience their menses the same as another, and to put menses and cycles into like some sort of standardized testing requirements is just like against what they're about.
Yeah. I also ooh, I have to push up on that really hard that because I feel like like, this is gonna we're jumping in real deep real fast, but, like, because I appreciate what you're saying, and it sounds so beautiful, but it's also and, like, you have your own fertility issues that I don't know that you wanna get into in this episode, but, like, it's still coming from a place of, like, you're like, "Oh, it's beautiful, everything is different, and it doesn't have to be known," but, like, for people that have had, like, severe fertility issues, it's like, we want that research done because, like, we're not able to get pregnant because all of these things are so different and no one knows what to do about it.
Yeah, and I think you're right, and I didn't mean to be like, "It's so beautiful and let nature be nature, we don't need to uncover it." I think you're right. It may have, like, kind of crossed over into that sense. I guess I just meant, like, on a broader scale, I feel this way about, like, mental health as well, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't seek understanding, and I think that you're right. We have a right to have answers and to have medical treatment for our bodies, especially when you have reproductive disorders. And the thing is like on your side of things, the lack of knowledge around what a disordered reproductive system looks like has been very, very painful
Yeah.
and isolating for you. And I think my like super optimistic, like other side where it's like
It's okay.
I fall in a range is like can be very invalidating.
Yeah.
So I'm glad that you mentioned that. But I guess I just more so meant that our tendency to
Want it to be, like, a clear-cut
yeah,
system for
yeah,
understanding. I get that.
like, to oversimplify something that just isn't
Like, it's
simple.
28 days, and this phase is these days, and this phase is these days.
Yeah, exactly, that is a little bit I think that it's useful information, you're absolutely right, it is useful to have those ranges, but I also think that it is really complex to be, like, scientifically viewing something that, like I mean, we do understand plants and seasons, so why can't we understand menstruation? You're like, I enjoy that pushback because you've got me like, you're right. But I am just kind of like another half of me is just like optimistically like, you know,
I also think it's, like, coming from that place, though, of, like, being overly medicalized and it treated like a disorder. It's like you had the extreme opposite effect of that, where you're like, "I was never given the chance to develop this relationship with myself that is so natural, and I wish I would have gotten that," is what I'm hearing.
mhm.
And it's like and that is so beautiful, and it's like, yeah, it's like, I'm like, "Yeah, I love that." And then I think the side of me like, from my experience of, like, trying to find answers for years and years and years and years, like, and no matter what testing I do, it's like, we have no idea, like, this is probably fine, and this isn't relevant, like, right? It's like it's more like, "Okay, but I want answers, so, like, why is this not being studied?" And I think both of those things can be true, and that's why this like, I think our mission with this podcast, right, is to find, like, those intersections of, like, what our human experience is and, like, understanding things through the scientific and the spiritual lens.
Yeah. And like we're very lucky to like have each other because like I think you really heard me and like hear my experience and wanted to hold space for that. even though it was so different from your own and, like, very difficult to kind of allow for that, like, passion and excitement around something that is so like, such a wound for you in your life and something that you, like we don't really wanna open that wound. Like, we don't want to, like, we don't have
In a couple days, but I've gotten there.
you have. And you're like yeah, you're articulating like, I love that we're, like, kind of going back and forth, and I'm, like, articulate because we've done all these, like, behind the scenes conversations. We were not here. We were not here, like, 12 hours ago, maybe even 4.
We have brought our friendship to a new level through this discussion, and I actually think that that is why this might be one of the most important episodes we ever record, because I think that this is no matter what phase of menstruation, pregnancy, menopause you are in, it's something that people don't talk about even between their friends. Like, they might talk about it on a surface level,
Yeah.
but not the, like, true in the weeds of, like, what you're experiencing as a person and, like, how that's defining you, and to your point, that's, like, such a huge part of our life, and it's just kind of like, think about how many of us, like, how to like, we're, like, hiding tampons and pads because 'cause we're so embarrassed when it's, like, the most natural thing. To your point, it's almost like this part of being a woman is so, like, diseased and taboo that we don't get a chance to know what our relationship is with it and whether that becomes good or bad later. It's kind of, like, stripped from us as teenagers.
Yeah, I have had this talk around pregnancy as well because I was very like, pregnancy is a natural thing that women do, and we've been doing it for years, and Western medicine has made pregnancy like, they treat pregnant women like they're a disease. However, there is a lot of medicine that has made pregnancy, instead of being something women die from, something that they like, I could have died had I not sought medical help, and, like, a part of
Probably
me
would have.
a part of me arguably thinks that the reason my baby died is because I didn't get actual medical help. So, yeah, that's, like, where we're coming from with this is cycle syncing for me really allowed me to have a relationship with this part of me that's very important with me. And Mads, I don't want to speak for you, but like what I'm hearing is that like you really respect that, but it's really, really hard because you don't see how this specific conversation of cycle syncing really plays into your relationship with your reproductive
Yeah.
self.
I think it's fair. I think it's even I don't even know that it's, like, that I don't see how it's relevant, even though I said that a bunch of times, but I think that it's more that it makes me sad that I, like, can't relieve the symptoms in, like, I probably could, and that's why I'm, like, really excited to learn more from you about, like, maybe the signs of the different phases and, like, how I could bring those in, so I think it is still relevant, but I think that the wound or, like, the resistance that we felt coming up was more, like, bringing it back into, like, my conscious awareness that, like, this is, like, the experience I'm, like, quote, unquote, "supposed to be having," and that, like, this is the normal experience, is, like, these phases that are, like, predictable and, like, this week of the month, this thing is happening, and this week of the month, this thing is happening, and, like, you could just do these things and your life will be better. So I think it, like, calls out that, like, that doesn't feel like an option to me. Even though, like, the more we explore it, maybe it is, and, like, that will be a cool thing to try out.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do a different episode once we get more research on different types of cycles because I'm coming from this with like a very personal lens. I'm coming at this from somebody who happens to be lucky enough to have a regular cycle to sync with. But I do want to hold space for people who don't have that, for people who experience ovarian disorders. But I don't feel comfortable really using that terminology. But essentially, I want to make way for the idea that there might be different herbal remedies for Mads
Yeah.
or for anybody else who is having a different cycle experience than me. And I would encourage you to, Maddie is very brave and courageous for wanting to have a conversation and have a relationship with something that has been so tumultuous for such a long time and that there aren't answers to. Like, you're walking you're exploring uncharted waters with me, and, like, I wanna kind of do that with you too, and it's much scarier when you're coming from this idea that, like, it's not normal. And so I just, like, really appreciate you still, like, holding space for how hard, like, even though it's hard, and, like, being open to it, even though sometimes it's like, "Wait, what?" Like, I does that like, I don't know if I'm like, my basal body temperature doesn't change or whatever it is, right? Like, I could measure it that way. I don't know that I'm gonna see anything, right? Because my hormones are all out of whack. And I would argue that even with a normal cycle, I still have hormonal differences. It's literally so complex. All of the research we looked at, first of all, has small sample sizes, are not longitudinal studies, at least like super long, and like max like 2 years, I think is what I saw. And
And usually only focus in like 2 phases too.
they only well, I saw some that focus on all phases, but they only dealt with people who have normal, like falling within normal range cycles. So, to Maddie's point, researching this must have been really frustrating because she's looking at all this science and none of it pertains to, like, she can't find herself in the data, and she's actually actively reading sentences that are like, we excluded all of these people. Like, that would be so fucking triggering. Like, that's fucked.
But
So,
I will say, like, thank you for saying all that, and it also did give me a lot of hope, because, like, I think we even, like, had this talk, like, last night that there was actually more research than I was expecting, to be honest. Like, when we were talking about this episode, we were both kinda like, "How much neuroscience research is there actually gonna be around this?" Like, is it gonna be there? And, like, there was by no means enough compared to how men are studied, so I don't wanna say that, but, like, there is this, like, upward trajectory, like Cass said earlier, of women being in science, pushing this issue, creating as good of studies as they can, and so even though it was really disheartening and it was really hard for me on this, like, really personal level, it gave me a lot of hope. Because we kind of have to start with what is considered normal ranges to understand baselines before we can get into, like, where things maybe fall out of those normal boundaries.
yeah.
And so I do wanna be clear about that and that, like, at least it's starting to happen. I mean, it's really sad that it only has happened in the last, like, 5 years, but at least it's there.
As we touched on, cycle syncing is something that you can do to relieve symptoms. It can create a relationship with you and your cycle. And my personal experience is that it does relieve PMDD symptoms, which are essentially my emotional changes, my severe depression, severe lack of energy, and kind of like that guilt and shame I feel around my menstrual week of like, why does nothing work out for me? All of this stuff, and kind of like, I'm extra hangry and all this stuff. Some of that is a part of it, but now that I have begun cycle syncing, it doesn't feel as jarring and I don't feel as much guilt and shame around it because I'm like working into it. So, cycle syncing is the act of aligning my lifestyle with what phase of my cycle I'm in. And I'm gonna continuously reference the cycles as seasons. So, like, my body
I love that.
yeah, my body is, like, its own, like, Mother Earth, right? My spiritual understanding of it and why I'm gonna keep making this reference to the seasons is because females get this beautiful opportunity to create life, and I think that is something that I've always treasured, and I think cycle syncing really brought me into appreciation for my body's ability to do that and seeing my cycle as a relationship with like my spirit as a life creator and how my cycle is a part of that, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And just like, you don't just love the flowers in the spring or the life that's present in summer. I have learned even through cycle syncing, I'm more appreciative of the seasons outside in the world because I'm appreciative of the seasons inside of me.
That's really sweet.
So it's just like this big relationship with rhythm, I guess. And I think that getting in tune with my cycle really gave me this sense of in tunement with rhythm and with life and with death. That was very spiritual for me, but it's also beneficial for my health and my mental health
And your relationship.
and my relationship. Yeah, because my husband is a big part of my cycle syncing. And it allows me to come into my full power as a woman, which allows me to be in better relationship with other women, my husband, just like other people in general, because I'm in better relationship with myself. That was one like woo woo aspect of why cycle syncing is a big deal in my life. And I think the other one was just, like I said, symptom mediation and management and getting rid of those emotional symptoms and mental health symptoms because I have mental health issues outside of that. And I found that every time I made progress, sometimes it would feel like 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, or that saying, and that can be because of the natural rhythm of life. And so just kind of representing that life is cyclical and I am cyclical. That's a beautiful thing as a woman rather than not being kind of like experiencing things of the typical male way of rise and fall daily cycles. We have monthly cycles.
And I will say that the idea of cycle syncing is really appealing to me. I don't remember who it was, but I remember I listened to a podcast years ago where she brought this up how society is built around the male 24-hour cycle and it's not an adjustment for women's monthly ish cycle. And so I like the idea of that is so beautiful. And I'm really excited to hear more about how you implement that in your monthly cycle.
Yeah. So we'll go into if you don't know about your cycle, we're getting to our cycle education portion of the podcast. So there are 4 phases to your cycle, just like there are 4 seasons to the earth. And our cycle actually begins scientifically, we count our menses from the first day of our period. So our cycle begins in winter. So your period is associated with winter, and that will help give you an idea for the types of activities, the types of energy, and the types of foods you should be eating. So, in my period, I really think about warmth, easily digestible, trying to void off sickness, feeling sick, less activity, less socialization, really playing into nostalgia, comforting, mood lighting, celebrating and reflecting on the year even, lots of downtime, maybe nurturing activities like reading, but very low energy, like physical energy.
Yeah, and I really like that visualization with winter and really taking care of yourself and expecting this more kind of lower time period, not expecting yourself to be doing so much. And that really aligns with more of the science, so the biological side of things, right? Because your estrogen and progesterone, serotonin, and dopamine are all down. So that would make sense that you're maybe not firing on all cylinders, so to speak. And even your hippocampus, which is the area in charge of memory,
Mhm.
amongst other things, but it's actually downregulated or not working as much.
Mhm.
And so it would make sense when people have those experiences of brain fog, not feeling so sharp.
Yeah, short-term memory loss, like you walk into a room and you don't remember why you went there. That happens more on your period, and the science essentially backs that.
Yeah, so it's like your prefrontal cortex and your hippocampus are both not working as efficiently. And so that's why you might have trouble having more brain fog, less executive function, less decision making, more irritability.
Yeah, because your prefrontal cortex is that like emotional regulation, decision making, time management. And that makes sense because I don't know what I want to eat, but I need food constantly. So, as far as lifestyle activities, those are the broad stroke, think winter. But for me, because I don't have as much energy to cook, I will even food prep beforehand all these meals, and so this really helps my husband. My cycle syncing menu helps my husband kind of understand how he can best support me in my menses. And so typically, nutritionally, humans should be getting at least 2,000 calories a day. And from what I saw previously when I started this whole journey, you should be actually adding to that by quite a bit. Your menses takes a lot of energy. Just think hibernation. Like, your body takes extra energy to keep you warm in the winter. Well, your body takes extra energy to kind of shed its inner lining, and it's taking more water. It's taking more blood. It's taking so much from your system that's why you feel drained, and it's a normal part of this. And so how you can support it in that and kind of alleviate some of that comes into the cycles before, but during this cycle, I eat 1,500 extra calories. So I'm eating 3,500 calories a day. I'm constantly eating. It's really good that you just listen to your body and go with these flows. I focus on protein, complex carbs, and I don't have caffeine. And I am really focused on hydration. So water, tea only. There are herbal blends that I drink specifically that contain really nutritious things like oat straw. There's red raspberry leaf that will like help with the muscles in your uterus. So it will help decrease cramping and support those muscles in your uterus, as well as that's really cool. Yeah, as well, rose hips are really good for your ovaries. That's why they're shaped like little ovaries. They're really cute. And I think for people who have maybe abnormal cycles, I don't have those herbs listed out, but I know for a fact that there are different herbal supplements, and there are people who are looking into things that support people in PCOS, things that really support different aspects of your reproductive organs. So those are options.
Look at. I think in general, just again, this we're kind of moving a little bit into speculation, kind of not. Ultimately, because the research just isn't there. But in general, which we haven't gone into yet, but it is surgically diagnosed. And a big part of endometriosis is like inflammation. And so anything that you can do to reduce inflammation in your body is going to be really helpful for reducing the intensity of cramping and symptoms. And I think that's true across the board. Magnesium can really help with reducing cramping.
Yeah, magnesium super important for your muscles. I know you have a list of vitamins you saw that were in the research, but this idea that reducing stress, so during your menses, your body is very sensitive to stress, and because of that, that's why this leads perfectly into the types of activities you should be doing, and specifically exercise. I think exercise is something we talk a lot about as far as a good tool for mental health.
Yeah.
Is daily exercise. And this is funny because it comes to cycle syncing. What daily exercise you do changes throughout the month based off of what your body needs. So when you are on your period, first of all, I don't exercise the first 2 days of my period.
And if you are going to walk, maybe more like a mindful walk, not a brisk, like I'm power walking my anger out walk. More like looking at the trees and connecting with nature.
Beautiful. Yeah. And breathing, stretching, right? Some light stretching, just moving your body in a very intentional and mindful way. Some yoga.
I actually am a 500-hour registered yoga teacher, and we did go partially into this and some of the yoga philosophy and recommendations. And again, this is according to traditional yoga texts, but generally they talk about just really avoiding inversions.
Yeah.
You don't want to do too much balancing or going upside down. If you Google like yin yoga or gentle yoga or go to those classes, it should be safe. But just don't push yourself.
If you are somebody who likes exercising regularly, the end of your cycle is perfectly fine to start exercising. And there are different exercises that work for different people. I've seen it be recommended to do like light abs the last day of your cycle. Yeah.
I know, again, this I haven't seen this in the research, but just thinking back in my teenage days when I was having the very severe symptoms, specifically around pain, and I was a competitive dancer and weightlifted, so there was a lot of pressure around pretty intense physical exercise. I will say sometimes it could be helpful. I was told to exercise to help reduce cramping, but I don't know if that's supportive in anything. And if I could get myself to do it, it would help. But I don't know why that would be or
Or
what it is.
you can't get yourself to do it because your PFC is offline.
Exactly. But if you can, you have scheduled practice, like especially some dancing, which is really fun. I think it's the easiest to be able to see without having to biologically measure anything.
You're right.
Whereas without doing a saliva test or something to test your hormones, that requires a lot more intervention.
It's funny that is because the other phases, all the work I do in my follicular, my ovulation, and particularly I do a lot of work in my luteal phase that will the work I do in my luteal phase really sets me up for my period because the luteal phase is the phase right before my period and it's like the fall, right? So in the fall you prepare for winter and ironically that's the last phase we're going to go into. So some of the foods I eat, which we are gonna post a little mini menu with snacks and drink ideas based off of what I do. So I do hard-boiled eggs and protein bars because I work and I need to grab something that has a lot of protein and good nutritious healthy fats, complex carbs. I never miss breakfast and I never skip dessert on my period because like I said, I eat 3,500 calories. So my husband will make me red meat, usually the first day of my menses. I'll have like sweet potatoes, asparagus, healthy starches, lentils, cauliflower, cruciferous vegetables, curry over rice, right? I'll have spice that helps kind of warm me up from the inside out, especially if you're using like cayenne or pepper. Like, it will help if you're using turmeric. Some of those are very anti-inflammatory ingredients, which you talked about inflammation as a part of that, some of these symptoms. And then the spice also helps with nutrient absorption. So we just really want to get a lot of nutrients and we want to support everything, make sure we're getting lots of vitamins. I'll do ramen, so like warm broth, very nutritious, easily digestible, right? Liquid forms of food. And then for dessert, I'll do dark chocolate because that high magnesium content and frozen fruit or just fruit in general. But like I said, I never miss a meal. So I have cake in a cup recipes. Like I splurge on my period.
Love it.
It only lasts a week. So I splurge for that week. I love winter because I've created such a resting point around it. It's a really good aspect of self-care because once a month I have to give myself a lot of rest. I look forward to my period because it's my cheat week. I'm going to watch a cozy movie. I get to pick all the dinners. I eat dessert. It's just the best. I never had that relationship with my period before. It's always something you dread. Yeah, this is going to make everything so much harder. And I'm like, oh, vacation.
And I think that's why this is so important and exciting to talk about, despite some of the nuances we talked about earlier. Within our culture is a very like go, go, go productivity culture. Me and you have discussed a lot by ourselves, but I mean, especially anyone in the US can relate to that idea of like, if you are a successful person, you're serious about your life, you're getting up at 5 a.m., you're working out, you're fasting in the morning, like you've done all these things all day. That might particularly be in my consciousness because I've been a business owner for 5 years. A lot of the content geared towards business owners and freelance people is that if you're serious about something, no matter what happens, you're going to push through it and you're going to motherfucking go. And it's like you're getting up, you're being on time. And that is a very male oriented or 24 hormone cycle oriented way. Men can do that in a way that's not depleting to them. But for women to try to do that during their period, like you said, when all your hormones are down and you are meant to have more food, restricting yourself, forcing yourself to exercise in these really intense ways can be
Damaging.
really damaging. So I think that's really cool that you laid it out in a way that feels really logical and science-based. It also has a spiritual component.
Yeah, yeah. So it's just not sustainable. So when you feel like life is unsustainable, that's because Mads is absolutely right. The life we're living and the society we're living in isn't built to be sustainable for us.
Yeah.
So we don't feel sustainable in it. And I think cycle syncing has brought a lot more sustainability to my life.
Wow, we had so much to say, and Kat's passion bled through so much. I had a great time learning about cycle syncing, but we ran out of time. So we'll catch you next week for part 2.